Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, wherever you are on this glorious planet.
Yes,
I'm Ariel,
she certainly is.
and he is.
Shia.
We do finish each other's sentences, and welcome to being here.
You know, it's okay to have fun today.
Oh, that would be lovely. Grateful and fun actually go together.
Well, yes, I was just looking at how serious people are.
Mhm.
When people are terribly serious, they're worrying about all kinds of things way off in the future that they can't do anything about, that may never happen, but they're worrying about it.
We got a very funny email today
Yeah.
from a friend of ours, Stephanie. I didn't read it to you. It said, "Are you serious?" That was the subject. And inside it was like, there aren't very many people coming yet for this Saturday's Living Made Easy. Seriously? And then she wrote, I really love the pun intended, because sometimes when you're not being serious, when you are being serious, you're not taking care of things. You are.
Well, usually when you're being serious, you're working on something that isn't right in front of you. That's often your future that you think you're going to have to deal with. And you never know how things are going to turn out until you get there anyway.
This mystical excuse, 11:11, a mystical excuse to be grateful. We encourage you in the description to allow yourself to be grateful, and any excuse will do. There is the affirmation, I am grateful, I am grateful, I am grateful. Gratitude. There's the statement, and then there's the experience.
Yes.
And when you drop into the experience of gratitude for this moment, everything opens up.
That's true.
Happens through listening here. It really does.
See, listening is a skill set that most of us have not been schooled in. Most of us have learned to listen from the families we grew up in, where in my family, the person who spoke the loudest was the smartest, you know? And people didn't listen to each other. They talked to each other. They said what they had to say, but when people were talking, people were disagreeing rather than hearing their point of view, hearing what they had to say. And it's taken us, a while in the waking up process that we've gone through. I mean, Ariel and I had met about 42 years ago, and we've been in a process and experience of waking up to the moment and getting here and being present rather than thinking about getting here and being present. And one of the greatest assets to accessing the moment is the ability to actually listen. See, most of us think we're listening when we're thinking about what's being said, rather than just allowing what's being said to come in without filtering it through what you already know or believe to be true. I saw this really interesting podcast this morning because I turned on YouTube in the morning to see the craziness of our world. And I was watching an interviewer interview some people who are MAGA Republicans, and they are for Donald Trump. And the interviewer said, is there anything a Democrat could say that you would be interested in listening to? And they said, no. So that's not listening. See, listening is hearing what somebody else says, not seeing whether you agree or disagree, not seeing whether it supports your point of view or doesn't, not seeing whether you already know this information. I was just taken by how completely closed off to listening to these people were. Now I know this is a specific group, and I know that the interviewer had a point of view, and all that aside, just I already know everything there is to know, and so you can't tell me anything that's going to change my mind. That attitude is normal.
I have to say, I really actually enjoy hearing, if we're delving just for a moment into politics, to both ends of the spectrum. I just am so fascinated how people see and how they put their lives together. And it's like if we don't listen to each other, life is just a big battle.
Well, look, we've discovered how to have a magical relationship, how to truly love and support each other without having lists of transgressions about each other or ourselves, even. We've learned how to be forgiving and kind and present in our life. But it's taken a while, and we didn't learn it at home.
Well, absolutely true. And home really is where it starts. I know that Sunday is Mother's Day.
Oh
And
my.
this whole topic 1111 in this framework came through with my mom and her passing. And really, if you're carrying around a grudge about how your parents lived their lives,
What they
what
did
did
or
or
didn't
didn't do,
do.
particularly in relation to you, your ability to create and sustain a magical relationship is really non-existent. It is
Well,
hampered.
I'll give it a 1% chance of possibility.
Okay.
And that's that I'm being very generous, because if you are at war with one or the other of your parents, anybody in relationship with you will become a target for your warfare.
How about we take our first guest just
Oh,
because
maybe they'll be at war and we can talk about it.
maybe they'll be at peace and we can talk about it.
That's right.
All
Who are we
right.
speaking to here?
Hi, this is Michelle in New York City.
Hi, Michelle.
So lovely to have you with us. Really, really, really.
I feel the same. It's good to see you.
You know, I'm going to take a moment and tell you not only are we grateful to have you in our lives and have you as a friend, but you are one of the people who behind the scenes helps produce the podcast, make sure they're released to the public. And we are so grateful to you for that.
And you volunteer to do it, and I appreciate your supporting the possibility of transformation getting out into the world. See, there's such a difference between thinking about your life and living your life directly as an experience of living. And most of us are lost in thinking about our lives. And when we first met, that's what you did.
and
that was
well, you're
what
a
everybody did.
scientist. You're very good at thinking.
Yeah.
I am, yes. And thank you for your kind words. That's very sweet of you. It's my pleasure to be part of the production of this podcast and to have you as my friends. Yeah, speaking of being grateful, I have a lot to be grateful for. My relationship with my wife, Susan, and my life here in the States, my relationship with my family and colleagues and friends. There are many things that I'm really grateful for. I had the thought, although I have a lot to be grateful for, I don't always feel grateful. And then, am I a bad person because of that?
I can answer that. What you are is normal.
Yes.
Only actually, you're not quite normal, because I suspect the quotient of gratitude is far greater than many, because and it's not worthwhile to compare, but it's so easy to get lost in resisting something. And the moment you resist something or argue for your point of view, your ability for gratitude goes right out the window.
Well, your ability to experience living is diminished dramatically, because as soon as you take a point of view in opposition to anything, you are no longer in your experience of living. Now you're in your thoughts about right and wrong and good and bad, agree and disagree, all of the dichotomies of life, run your life, and the possibility of transformation no longer exists. There's only change, which is incremental, which is linear, and which takes place over time. And with change, you never get there. I'm reminded of a time, probably going back about 50 years now, where I was leading a seminar in Rockland, Maine, and it was taking place in a alcohol and drug rehabilitation center. But the meeting that I was there to facilitate was not about drugs or alcohol. It was about transformation. And I'm walking up a circular staircase, and there's this fellow walking down, and he was one of the inmates, or what do we call them? No, somebody in the rehab program. And I said, "How you doing?" And he said, "I'm getting there. I'm getting there." Now that has changed. And I had the thought, and I was not as aware, as evolved as I am 50 years later, but I had the thought, this guy is never going to get there. Because if you're not here, you're not going to get there either.
What is that? You know this principle, you cut something in half, you cut it in half again, and you never arrive at the, what is that? Is that Occam's razor? It's something, I don't know what it is, where you keep cutting it in half.
Yeah, I don't know the name for that, but yeah, if you always just go 50% of the way of what's left, you'll never arrive, because you always just go halfway.
Well, that's the thing. And people make all kinds of New Year's resolutions to do their life differently, as if they did it wrong in the past. And you've done New Year's resolutions, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And you may have kept them for a week, maybe.
At maximum, yes.
I'm not big on ritual. So this 11:11 thing, where when I notice it's 11:11, to stop for a minute.
Did you say that was the time that your mother passed away?
Yeah, it's in the
intro,
in the description. But in case you're not reading the description, 11:11 is a mystical number for lots of different reasons. You can look it up. And when my mom passed away at exactly 11:11 p.m., it was, oddly enough, in the midst of all of the pain of losing her and the passing, and her struggles to not let go, because she really would have, in her heart of hearts, she really wanted to be there longer, and her body just wouldn't support it. And so
our brother-in-law, who was there also at that moment, it was a doctor, and he pronounced the time of death as 11:11. So that's why it became a thing that we even thought about.
Because it's not something you look at the clock necessarily and go, whoa. But he pronounced her as having passed at that time. And it's been something for me over the past number of years, because that was 2019, where if I happen to notice that time, it reminds me of being here. And I played around with seeing what I'm up to and allowing myself to, I can't always close my eyes, because if I happen to be driving, I'm not going to keep driving, close my eyes for a minute. But there seems to be a lot of time where I can take just a moment out of my day, see where I am, and allow myself to be self-expressive. And yet there are moments where I'm like, okay, this is not, I can notice the time, and it's not, I'm in mid-step, I'm walking somewhere, and if it's not an appropriate moment to stop, I don't. But I've been having fun with allowing myself to drop into the experience of well-being, rather than stand for a minute and talk to myself about it.
That's really cool. I see it a bit like a game. When you notice it's 11:11, to just stop what you're doing and be aware and be present. And
Well, I'm very thankful for Ariel's mother because without her, I wouldn't have Ariel. And Ariel is an amazing, amazing being. And without, see, you can either be doing being amazing, where you're constantly proving that you're special, or you can allow yourself to be the way you are, and then you are special, exactly as you are, without changing anything about you. See, but in our world, people are constantly lost trying to get to what they think is a better place to be than where they are. So they're never satisfied wherever they get to. And, before you met us, you were normal. Now you're not normal anymore. You mutated into a being who has the capacity to be where he is rather than get lost in an argument about how things ought to be different. And that's where we met you, because that's where we meet everybody who meets us.
Especially where we met ourselves.
Yeah.
And then life happens and you either get more enmeshed in the right, wrong, being right, proving
good, bad,
category,
right, wrong. Everybody did it to you. You become the victim of the circumstances.
or
you
perhaps
become,
there's another path.
Yeah, you become the captain of your own ship, where you are the captain of your soul rather than, that's a quote from Invictus by Robert Ernest Henley. Yeah. Where you become the captain of your soul rather than the victim of the circumstances of life. And most folks are lost in victimizing themselves with that their life turned out in a way it shouldn't have. And I'm of the opinion, our lives turn out exactly as they should, because everything we've done has been to produce what we end up with in the current moment. And as you become more and more aware of your mechanical nature, you become less and less mechanical, because awareness is enough to free you from the mechanical nature of life, those self-repeating thoughts about your inadequacies. You very rarely have thoughts about your adequacies.
You mean self-repeating?
Oh, am I
so
good? I'm good. I'm good.
I'm so beautiful. Oh, look at me. Oh, wow, what a success. Oh, yes. No, those aren't repeating.
No, those aren't the repeating.
Occasionally.
Occasionally.
Oh, occasionally. But those occasionallys are in a resistance to the insecurity that's below them, where you're proving you're not. You see, I'm good. I made it.
I am.
Yes, I've made it.
I've done that.
From thinking I'm a failure to proving I'm a success, but I don't think I'm a failure anymore.
Now,
and the most successful people have that mechanism as well. It's just that we think that they are, like the actors and actresses that you look up to. Well, they're acting like they've got there.
They're doo-doo together. Hey, clearly, in case you haven't noticed, we have a bit of energy today. And
we do.
We do. We've been like inspired. Partially, it's their ability to listen. It's like drawing it from us. But yes. I just wanted to stop the action for a minute and see if there was anything in particular you either wanted to ask or share, because we've done the majority of the talking at the moment.
Okay. Well, what we've been speaking with Michelle, and his wife Susan is right there also. When you said they, even though our listeners,
yes,
would
Susan is our next guest, but we allowed her, or said, why don't you guys, you don't have to leave the room.
Zoom,
so we're watching them together, but so that they could each have their own conversation with us. So yes.
Yeah, so I did ask my question. It was about, this thought or knowing that I should be grateful, but then not being grateful, and then having the thought, am I a bad person for not being grateful all the time? That was an observation, but also the question.
Well, let's start with, you can't be different than you are in the current moment of your life. So if you happen not to be grateful in this moment, you're not supposed to be grateful in this moment. If you get lost in an upset, that's where you're supposed to be in the moment because that's where you are. Now, if you bring awareness to it, awareness is a non judgmental seeing of what is, like a scientist. I know you're a scientist, so like a scientist, you see what's in front of you, see what's going on, and you don't judge it. It loses its power over your life. So you become more and more able to extract yourself from upset because you don't have to fall into it in the first place. But when you do, if you see it without judging it, it completes itself in an instant if you let it.
I love your question, Ron. First, I'm going to talk about it in two paradigms. First is change. In change, good person, bad person. Good, bad, right, wrong, better, worse. A better person would be grateful all the time. Also in the Judeo-Christian thing, there's a pressure to be a good person. In the Hindu version, when we built in Bali, Indonesia, and they do offerings multiple times a day with incense and flowers, and I'm moving my hand around because they often would hold a blossom in their hand and they'd move it with incense and whatnot. They were not doing offerings to the good gods. They were doing offerings to the dark gods because they wanted to make sure they gave them their due, because otherwise they might get angry and then do something. So when we built a conference center there, Michelle, we built down the hill like a meditation hut. It was a really beautiful building with boutique cushions right overlooking the river where we could sit and just relax. And you could have maybe half a dozen people there comfortably, or you could, lay down at night, listen to the crickets and whatnot. And while they were building it, there was a landslide down there and big boulders broke away, like the size of Volkswagen vans. I mean, they were huge. And I remember we ran down the hill to make sure none of the workers were hurt. And our partner there, who was Balinese, was certain that the land broke away because we had not paid enough tribute to the negative side of things. So it was less about being a good person and that recognizing if you're going to have light, you're going to have shadow, and there needs to be a balance. So your question itself, at least partially, comes from how we've all been conditioned.
Yeah.
And in a transformational framework, an anthropological framework, it's looking to see what is. And from a personal framework, I would think if you are always a positive person, you're probably full of it, or hiding from yourself the negative thoughts because you judged them as bad. I think it was a recent show we were on, Michelle, a recent podcast we did. We were talking about an interview we once saw with the Dalai Lama, where the interviewer was talking about the Save Tibet and how the Save Tibet movement and how, oh man, did that fail? And the interviewer went, you failed at something? You're holding that as failure? He's like, oh yeah, that was a big failure. I'm absolutely certain he doesn't go, oh, I'm so grateful it failed.
Yeah, it's
you
true.
know, you have awareness, a non-judgmental seeing of what is, which includes seeing that you think if you ever get into a negative space or lose your sense of gratitude, that's a bad thing. That's your judgment. It's like noticing you have that judgment, because in the noticing, it neutralizes it. So you don't have to drive yourself forward to be a different you, a better you. You can be yourself. And that's part of why, by the way, I love this 11/11 thing, because sometimes I just stop in and go, ooh, boy, I'm feeling well right now. Or, oh boy, was I driving myself forward. Or, oh,
That is so cool.
Mm. I had the funniest thing with our cat today. Busy. I was really busy. And she jumped up on the desk and I kind of was aware of her. And then she has two ways of jumping down from a surface. One is like where she jumps down and it's very elegant. And another, I swear she's stomping her feet. She jumped down under protest and she walked off, turned her back on me, and went like, she was, and then I realized she was protesting my lack of awareness. So I turned to her and I made the sound back at her. And she kept walking and I made it again. But I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't recognize. Do you want some attention? She turned around and she looked at me. And then she walked over and hopped up on my lap and started purring.
Oh,
And it was like, she was not grateful that I ignored her.
yeah.
Anyway, I thought I'd tell you because I know you guys are cat lovers, and it was really, really sweet.
Yeah, that's very cute. And these little animals, they have personalities, and it's just sweet to see that. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing this story.
Mm, thank you. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Hey,
you.
be kind to yourself.
It's also
See,
the secret
look,
to magical relationships.
yeah, be kind to yourself because in your question, I see how you think you ought to be different than you are, rather than realize that you're a perfect expression of yourself in the current moment.
And by the way, you will always think that way.
That's right.
Don't try and get rid of it. You're always going to think.
However, when you get engaged in your life and are living in a moment-to-moment experience of living, you have much less time to complain about yourself to
And
yourself.
that pressure falls away.
And it falls away. But if you are trying to get rid of it, it's guaranteed to stay in place. So that's the paradox, if you will. It's really a good idea to be a good person, but if being a good person dominates how you are, then you're no longer a good person. You're a machine trying not to be bad.
You want to know what I'm grateful for right now?
What?
Having met you too.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, we're grateful that we met you too, and believe it, it's true.
And in Germany, our German speaking friends, Switzerland too, Selba takes one to know one. We're grateful right back. Now it's your turn. Let's hear what one of you listeners has to say about being here in the transformation community.
This is Sandy in Munich, and I just participated in the podcast Being Here. And I came in feeling tight in myself and a little bit upset with myself. And I left feeling relaxed and at ease and at home in my own personal self. I love transformation.
Do you want to have well-being with consistency? Connect with people all over the world from the comfort of your own home at Ariel and Shire's lively interactive Living Made Easy virtual seminars. Join any of their 2-hour online events or take a deep dive into the magic of being you at a virtual weekend seminar. Come on, let's connect. Find out more and register at transformationmadeeasy.com.
If you'd like to join us for a seminar, we have 2 Living Made Easy seminars coming up, one on Saturday, one on Monday. And of course, we have many more in the weeks and months ahead. So you can find those at transformationmadeeasy.com.
And we're doing a magical relationships virtual weekend in June 8th and 9th. So that's via Zoom. And then we do a creativity and intuition August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. That's a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. And that's going to be in New Jersey.
At the New
and
Jersey
in
Performing
personal-
Arts
in
Center.
person.
Mhm.
Yes.
That place is a very creative place. So it's like inhabited with good juju. And we're gonna bring it some more, and you are invited.
The other thing is Costa Rica 2025 is now open, and you can register to join us there for either 1 week or 2.
Yeah, it's filling up. There's room for you. You can find out information about any and all of our courses and sign up for our newsletter at transformationmadeeasy.com.
The other thing is for Costa Rica, we require a prerequisite that you join us for a weekend seminar so we can discover whether we play well together.
Either virtually or in person. So
Yes.
that the next couple opportunities are coming up. Also, shout out today to Salima. We are very grateful to you. Salima, we recently met, but prior to meeting her, she sent us through the portal here a message telling us she was grateful for this podcast and also for the people behind the scenes and at the website who helped produce it. She was talking about the 3 principles of instantaneous transformation that we often speak about, and how it allowed her to unravel, I'm using my words, perpetual problems or things that she'd been stuck with.
Issues.
I have to say, Salima, that when you wrote to us, it gave us a real boost. It was encouraging us to continue because we speak often. We've spoken. In fact, it won't be long. Next week, it's going to be 17 years we've been doing this podcast. And so it's lovely to hear back from listeners. It gives us a boost as well. So thank you for sharing of yourself. And one other thing, I know it was her boss or manager who invited her, and I loved in the section when it said, "Who invited you?" and she said, "A friend at work." I think it's so wonderful if you can have the people around you be friendly at work rather than, "Oh, that's my boss," or, "Oh, that's my report." Like there's something very lovely about that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take our next guest.
Yes, please. Hey, Susan.
Welcome
Hey.
back.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hi, it's great to be here. I'm Susan from New York City, and it feels so good to just be here. And I heard Michelle, who was your first guest. It was just lovely hanging out with you guys. You know, this 11/11, I've known for a while when your mother passed, Ariel, that it was her time of death.
Mhm.
And a couple of times I've texted you guys, "Hey, it's 11/11." Or one time when Michelle and I were driving, I took a picture of our dashboard with 11/11. And I kind of adopted it to think about my mom around that time, you know, and we said yes to doing this recording with you a few weeks ago. And since then, my father's passed away.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm really grateful that I met you guys, because when I first met you, I was at war with men and I thought my father was the bad guy.
Mhm.
And I can say that my relationship changed with him, and I am grateful to have him as a dad and to know him as the great guy he was. And I just think it's mystical to me that we signed up for this, and we just said, yes, we'll do it. I didn't know what the show was going to be about.
Well, maybe your life is mystical. See, maybe every aspect of your life is mystical if you're here for it. But when you're lost in trying to get somewhere that you think is better than where you are, then there is no mysticism in life. There's no magic. Magic shows up when you least expect it, when you get here.
Mhm. Like really, being aware of the type of sound the cat made today, just with her feet hitting the floor, and then the kind of trilling sound she made as she walked away, and being able to translate that and then actually replicate it back to her, like it was like an apology. It was like, no, I it was a mystical moment. And she rarely just comes over and jumps up. She has a whole ritual, so that she just came over was just so sweet.
Well, it's mystical because you say so.
It is.
Yeah. And if, and you can say it's mystical and it's not going to be mystical. See, that's the other thing. You can say, oh, my life is mystical. But if you're complaining about life, it's not mystical. The magic shows up when you least expect it, when you fall into the moment. That's where the magic lives. It isn't that you produce something with it. It's not about getting somewhere. It's really about discovering how magical just being is. And
Yes.
if you haven't had the experience, see, our approach is really about rehabilitating people's ability to experience living.
I like that. Rehab. We're all in rehab for being.
That's right.
We're re-strengthening that muscle that we kind of lost as kids.
We've all been taught how to do things, and we all know how to have things, but the ability to actually be where you are, when that driver in front of you is going slowly, and it's a 50-mile zone and they're doing 30.
Or we manage to catch every red light, or you get there right after the subway leaves the train leaves the subway station.
That's when being there is most important.
Yes. I find myself sometime, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, because otherwise you get lost in a complaint that life isn't showing up the way you think it ought to.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that sometimes, and especially on the subway, I find petty thoughts creeping in. I can just, and that's my question to you. I have these petty thoughts, and I think I should be able to catch them before I go down that complaint road.
Well, here's the thing. That thought that I have petty thoughts and I should catch them is just a thought from a mind that thinks it should be a better version of itself than it is.
You're just kind of like if we were doing the outline, am I a stupid person or not? What was your question, Michelle? I know you're still sitting here, so I should be better.
Am I a bad person for not being grateful?
Yeah. So if that's the header, that it's like I should be able to catch. That's like point A.
It's like you're saying, how you should be all the time. And if you're not being that way, you're somehow deficient, rather than you should be how you are in each moment, because you can't be different. Look, Susan, you and I spent a little time yesterday walking around Upper Broadway in New York City.
Right.
And we were in a Starbucks restaurant, and then we were in Zabar's. And I noticed that every time I got interested in looking at some cheese, somehow you got between me and that cheese.
That's true.
Or I was looking at shoes, at Harry's shoes, as we were walking by Harry's shoes, and you climbed in front of me again. Susan, what's happening here? Every time I start looking at something, you jump in front of me.
Right.
That isn't, and you said, you did it wrong.
I guess I needed some attention, like you were, and then you two were laughing about it by the time I showed up.
Yeah.
To hang out with you both. And I think that is super cool. It's not about being centered all the time as a goal. It's about discovering where you are and seeing if you're a little off. So the other day we were making dinner and I felt really good, except for I noticed I kept knocking things over.
Mm.
The water bottle went flying, a carrot got whacked, it's like it rolled off the thing. So it's like, I may think I'm good, and I was feeling well, but I was a little out of sync with myself. It's really just about noticing how you are without judging what you see.
Very cool.
And that is the doorway to enlightenment.
Mm.
When you just notice how you're being without chastising yourself for being good or bad, without picking on yourself for being any way other than the way you are. It's kind of simple, but then again, so am I.
Simple but profound.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you guys both, and in particular, in this case, you, Susan, in that I never would have made it to the city yesterday if you hadn't go, come on, let's go hang out. What day you want to go? And at first I was like, well, because at the time you were inviting me, I was really under the weather, not just physically, but I just had kind of fallen off my own personal center, so to speak. And we set up the time, and I came in. I'm just really grateful that you invited me to come in. And one of the things I noticed is how much stimulus there is in New York City. I woke up this morning going, wow, she sees more people, more items, more possibilities in one block than I see in an entire day out here in my home. It's like, wow, that was really cool. It was just a very fun thing to see.
Right. It was lovely seeing you both as it is now. Thank
Right.
you.
So I know you mentioned your dad
Mm.
and also mentioned your mom. Just for fun, if there was one thing about either one of them that you wanted to share with us that you're grateful for, I'd love to hear it before we go.
My father used to take craft paper in our living room all the way to the kitchen and unroll it, and we would paint on it. We'd lie down and he would draw our bodies outline. We would draw our hands. We would do magical drawings on this paper, and then we'd roll it up and throw it away. He was a fun guy to hang out with.
I love that.
And my mother was an amazing gardener. And you said something yesterday, Ariel, that I loved. I'm going to propose it to my siblings. We have both of their ashes. And you said, hey, you might want to commingle those ashes and plant them. And I think my parents would love that idea. I'm going to suggest it.
Garden food. So
Yeah, why not?
love it. What a treat being with you guys today. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ah, you know, Salima would not have found this podcast if her manager hadn't said, hey, I think you might really like this. Here's the link, or here's the podcast card, because we've made some cards for people in the community to hand out. Or you could just say to your friends, here's the URL, or you can text it or email it or whatever. Likely she'll be grateful to him forever for introducing her to a new possibility. When you're touched by things here, like I'm very touched by Susan and Michelle today. And also behind the scenes, we have Janet, who is also doing the producing for the first time. So welcome aboard, Janet. People give so selflessly of their time and their energy and their listening and their expertise. I think you all underestimate who you are and the difference you make. And if something touches you, it would likely touch your friends as well. So Feel free to share this podcast. You can subscribe so it comes to you in your favorite podcast app. You can sign up for any course or newsletters you might like. Transformationmadeeasy.com is our location. Next week's podcast is a fun one. When life hands you lemons,
Learn to juggle,
we'll be back
not
next.
jiggle.
We can learn to do both. We'll be back next week. So come on back.
And don't miss being here.